Hello, so this is a video I have announced at the World's Finals. This is a short rant, so not really structured, about the debate about strongest region. So in the past, everyone was agreeing with each other that Korea was the strongest region, right? So this was like season 2 and onwards. In season 2 there were some debates with Moscow 5, but this was more of one team, not a region, which is a common misconception in this debate. But afterwards, the years including 2018, everyone was agreeing that Korea is the strongest. Yes, 2018 China won both MSI and World Finals, but these were just the results. Before these tournaments were finished, people were still hyping up the Korean teams, and the overall consensus was that a team like Longju or would, for example, would win these tournaments. But in the end, that wasn't really the case. RNG won MSI, and then IG won Worlds. Very tricky. What do we do with this? So the results weren't in cohesion with the narrative. So either the narrative was false or the results are not indicative, right? Someone can win in a game of League of Legends, but not be the better team overall. A game of League is close to a game of luck. It has chances here, and I'm not talking about crit chance. Yeah, you can plan out stuff, but here can be a mistake, here can be a bit of luck, right? Even with dragons spawning and so on. I'm not saying it's like flipping a coin, right? It's not completely determined by chance, but especially with some with the element of draft, we often see that in some scenarios weaker teams are able to win games. But if these teams were to play not 5 games, or not a best of 1, but 5 games, or not 5 games but 10 or 100 games, this is a very different scenario from the winner of a best of 1. So if there's a debate, for example, let's go with the 2018 World Finals, Fnatic versus IG. So in games prior to the finals, we saw Fnatic actually winning games against IG, right? They won 2 games in groups and lost 1 game in groups against them. So from these 3 games, you could assume Fnatic was the better team, because yay, they won 2 games against them and they only lost 1. 2-1 makes you the better team. Well, if you just look at the scoreline or the results, obviously that is true. And even in the games, IG wasn't looking all that great. But now here comes the kicker. If teams play multiple games, creativity and strategy will become less and less relevant, because there are only so many strategies that you can run and so many ideas in which you can surprise the enemy, right? Over time it will be more based on individual skill of the players, clashing against each other, and team coordination and all these aspects, right? It comes down to the fundamentals of the game. As such, the scoreline Fnatic managed to get against IG in groups was really nice for them to get the first in their group, but it really didn't mean that they were so much better or that they were better than IG. Maybe at one moment, but this is also a problem with these best of series or any match. It's just momentarily. It's just for this one moment. The next day is the next day, right? What if a player has a stomach ache and then he can play as well, right? or maybe didn't sleep that well, and then the whole team is playing way worse because the main shot caller is not really online. This is just hypothetical, obviously, but this can happen, and as such, the series and their results, even if they're pretty one-sided, even a 3-0 whatever, can mean nothing in the end, because, well, it's just one toss of the coin, hypothetically speaking, right? So even if you get 3 times head, doesn't mean that head will always be the result of this coin flip. As such, the 2-1 lead from Fnatic didn't mean nothing in the final, because then, with even more games being played, right, the potential of 5, but in the end just 3, these games then showed how much better IG was. Maybe they improved, but still the potential to improve is also a strength of the team, in an indirect sense. But the fundamentals IG and the skill their individual players showed at the finals was not something that just developed over the month of the tournament. It was something that was there in the first place to get even IG to Worlds. What I mean with this long rant here is that we shouldn't focus on, okay, so XYZ team won, that makes them the best in the world, and then the next step, which I will now criticize, of the overall narrative people and Riot Games is pushing. So if one team wins, and they're winning, they're not the best team, as I've proven, if they win, then the whole region is on top. The whole region is great, even though it's just maybe just one team that even managed to get out of groups. So we didn't have that many examples of something like that in the past. But for example, if we go just to the last Worlds, so 2019 Worlds, if you give me a second here. So 2019 Worlds, so after IG's win and the Crownless are finally king, so China gets their first W in Worlds. Everyone was proclaiming them to be the best region ever, or the best region there's, right? Which is a bit more understandable if you look at the results. So RNG and IG winning the great international tournaments. But then going into 2019, we see, okay, so how dominant was China at Worlds? So we see FPX with a 4-2 score in their groups against Splice, J-Team and Gem. Then RNG just a 3-3 score in their group. Yes, with SKT, Fnatic and Clutch, it's probably the hardest group there ever was. And then IG gets a 4-2 score against Down1, TL and HQ. Overall, not very impressive score lines for the best region ever. On the other side, the region they dethroned as the best region has Griffin with 5-1, SKT with 5-1 and Down1 with 5-1 in first. So for like a bad region, this is quite good. And why do I say bad region and not second best? Because people weren't calling Korea the second best region at this point. Remember 2019 MSI? So it was quite a sad tournament, if you ask me. So we had like a normal group stage, or relatively normal. So teams like SKT, IG and TL with G2 as well were like the main region teams here. And then I think we had, who was there? We had Fangbu Buffalo and then someone else, I'm not sure. But the main point is IG was completely dominating everyone, and then only lost one game against SKT. So IG by far the best team, which is something that the narrative supported. If you remember, 2018 was just their finals win, and then the following MSI, so they're the defending champions in a sense here. So it makes sense, and that's all fine. And then we move to the next stage the playoff stage, or the semi stage here. And IG obviously in first, and then SKT in second, and G2 in third, and TL in fourth. So IG wants to play TL, SKT then gets to play G2. So China's best team, the best team in the world more or less, because a 9-1 in MSI group stage, that's really good. I think only 2 other teams did the same thing, and I think that was Longzhou and SKT. I'm not sure about this one here. So they play against TL, by far the weakest team. So TL gets into playoffs with a 4-6 record, beating Fangwu Buffalo twice and playing evenly against G2 and Flash Wolves. So not really good performance in any sense. A 4-6 here, not very good. G2 with a 5-5 record, also it's not really good. They're just even, and just even gets them third score. I mean, yes, they were able to beat SKT twice and Fangwu and Flash Wolves twice, but as I said, they played even against TL, and then they lost all games against IG and Fangwu Buffalo, which, yeah, so G2 and Team Liquid didn't really have a good showing here, and this is over multiple days, multiple games. So these games hold a bit more consistency and a bit more value to them than daily games. So a playoff series is a bit more coin flippy than a group stage because of the time difference between the games. So then in these playoffs we get, statistically speaking, great upsets. These upsets include SKT losing 2-3 against G2. So many are telling me then, so G2 was the favorite, G2 beat SKT in group stage and so on and so on. Which, yeah, I get that. But then again, looking at the overall team dynamics and the past team accomplishes and so on, and the individual player skills, this was quite an upset, especially it's second against third, so yeah, there is quite a difference here. But then we get to the greatest and in a sense most tragic upset in league history, I feel like. I mean, there were other crazy upsets in season 2, which also changed the results of an entire tournament. I think Moscow 5 losing to Taipei Assassins, and then Azubo Frost also losing to Taipei Assassins. It's also quite astonishing upsets, but that's not the topic here. We're talking about the most recent history to determine or to get the answer for the best region question here. But for that we have to speak over past tournaments, because results are in the end still very, very relevant to determine who is the best, right? You can't just say someone is very good but he hasn't won anything. For that to be true, that person or that region needs to show some serious skill, but even then, if you're that skillful, well, why aren't you winning? There are very few players. I can just think of 1 or 2 who are not winning anything, but are still regarded as one of the best. Like for example, Uzi winning I think just 2 LPL titles and 1 MSI, and he's still like probably the second best or third best player of all time. Similar story with Deft, who has won a bit more than him, or players like Chovy for now, right, who has also not won anything. So back to the topic, back to MSI 19. And then the greatest upset, as I alluded to, IG loses to Team Liquid. So here's my question for this, my rhetorical question. If IG and TL were to play 100 games, would IG lose? I would say no. If they would play 7 days a week, every day 5 games, 10 games, would IG at the end be the one with less wins? No. What does this mean in a sense? This means that IG is by far, in my opinion, by that point, the better team than Team Liquid. This is not hating on Team Liquid or anything. An upset is called an upset because the weaker team or the least expected winner is at the end the one moving on. As such, this is obviously one of the greatest upsets. And sadly, it hurts the entire narrative of the game. Because the best team, or the supposedly best team from the new best region at the moment, right? Because the region won 2 of the last 2 big tournaments, which is quite a good score, and also Korea performing very poorly at the 2018 World Championship with Genji, completely laughable performance, and so on. So yeah, to call China the best region here at this point is quite okay. 2019 MSI is where we're at. So then TL versus G2 in the final. Are any of these 2 regions or teams the best or second best at the moment? And sadly the answer is also no. So yes, at the end G2 completely demolished TL in the fastest series ever. Yeah, ever. And that's great and all, and they completely showed why G2 is better than TL. But this neither proves that EU is better than NA, nor does it prove that EU is the best region in the world, nor does it prove that G2 is the best team in the world. That's the next problem with MSI. There are far too few teams to actually call the winner the best team in the world. It's just for fun, more or less. Yes, at the end, the teams at MSI are the first place of each region. But in how many cases do we have 3-2 winners at MSI? So 2019 MSI is actually one of the rarer examples here. The only major team winning 3-2 in their finals to get to MSI was Team Liquid, who won 3-2 against TSM. All the other finals were 3-0s. IG winning 3-0 against JDG, G2 winning 3-0 against OG, and SKT winning 3-0 against Griffin. So, in this case, it would be more fair to say that G2 in that case would be the best team in the world. But then the narrative following this MSI win, crowning EU as the best or second best region in the world, well, maybe that's a bit too far. Because the more relevant part of the tournament, the group stage, because we see more games, we see more consistent, or we see consistency more valued than variation and variance. G2 actually performed very poorly here. And then again, with the finals win and with G2's performance in groups, this is just G2. This is not EU. This doesn't say anything about any other EU European team here. Maybe you could say something about European teams that are beating G2 in scrims, or maybe just a few moments or days after this tournament concluded. Right? Maybe you could say something about that then. But over the whole league and the whole history or the whole year of this league, you can't make any statements. And that's the problem with this narrative of the winner is just the best, and the next point, the winning region is just the best. So you could debate if SKT or IG, like, who would have won in the best of 5 here, because the best of 1 between these two were quite even. Yes, IG won the first one quite drastically, but the second one was also firmly in SKT's control. So the more prominent debate between these two teams or two regions, if we're like again using this region narrative, which is not very helpful in any point of analysis, shows how flawed these winners are. Again, we can move on to the 2019 Worlds Tournament. Again, so even though G2 won, and for a while the narrative was EU is the best, this was a bit more dumped down because of G2's rather mediocre performance in summer. If I remember correctly, the start was a bit lower, and because of that, the hype got a bit turned down. So the overall saying was IG and China still on top, and then teams like G2 very close to that, because right, G2 could get the golden road with winning MSI and then winning Worlds, which is only something SKT ever accomplished. So moving into the tournament, I think this is one of our first play-in stages, if I remember correctly. Let me check this for a second. No, we had the play-in stage before, but that play-in stage was mainly for wildcard teams. So this was the first time we got the modern wildcard tournament. If I see this correctly here. Anyway, here we saw some interesting stuff. So for some strange reason, a team like them.Thanks has to play in planes, which is totally not what planes is for. Planes is for like the weaker teams to qualify to the tournament, and a team like them.Thanks should never actually have to play in planes. It doesn't matter what the ruling is. This ruling is just a hindrance for everyone. So yeah. So the play-in spots in Worlds, so the 4th seed for the groups, these should be teams from the emerging regions to get a shot at Worlds. This should not be a spot where a team like them.Thanks gets seeded in and completely dismantles the dynamic of a group because the 4th seed is suddenly stronger than the 1st seed. This is a problem we had this Worlds as well, if I remember correctly. So yeah, problem with the ruling and seeding is still an issue in a sense here. So we have them.Thanks completely dismantling players, obviously, and then we have problems with EU Splice losing a game against Detonation Focus Me, and Clutch Gaming from NA actually losing 2 games against Unicorns of Love, if I see this correctly. Yeah. So we're not talking about NA here because we're mainly focusing around EU, Korea and China, because these are the teams, regions that are promoted as the strongest, which is again completely idiotic concept of talking about regional strength in the sense it is done today. What I mean with this is, as I alluded to, this way of talking. One team wins a tournament, and because of that, the whole region is good, which is obviously a bit flawed, because one team can just be way better than anyone else, which is often the case. But again, we're talking about how the narrative is flawed here, and not because how the entire idea is flawed. This may be something for the end of the video, or maybe something for another video. Maybe that's. So then again, with the mind of EU second best, China completely smurfing at everyone, and Korea being completely washed up, we go into 2019 World Championship. And let's not forget, TL and NA is so super good. They got second in MSI. Again, completely forgetting how well it was a 4-6 TL that somehow got into the next stage, the best of 5 stage, and then by like the luck to win the lottery beat IG. So yeah, they're patting themselves on the back for something that happens entirely by chance. Which, I mean, yeah, for the players you have to feel happy because you won, as well as for the fans. But on an analytical standpoint, you have to understand that this is not a victory, this is a loss. Which means obviously not one team. A victory would be one team winning, and a loss is one team losing, which is very different here and everywhere. But then again, going back to Worlds, so we see. Let's look at China, because China was held as the best team. We see FPX with 4-2, Royal Never Give Up with 3-3, and Invictus with 4-2, as I alluded at the very beginning of this video. So only 2 teams of China has go on, with one being in first, one being in second, and RNG going out in third position. So then again, with such a score, how can you say the entire region is good when the top 3 teams are not even making it out, and one of them is actually in second? How is the region the best? Well, okay, maybe this is the best. Any other region is just worse. Any other region has just one first place and no second place or something like that, right? Maybe the best region is 1, 2, 3 in the rankings here. Then let's look at Europe, right? The best region and winning MSI. So we see G2 in second, then we see Splice in second, and then we see Fnatic in second. So, well, I guess everyone is in second, so that's quite good. If you add up the ranks, so 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6 through 3, because we have 3 teams. So an average of 2. So yeah, EU is average in second place, which is obvious because everyone is in second place. Why do I bring this up? If you compare that with China, with 1, 2 and 3, this also adds up to 6 divided by 3 teams. So also China and EU share an average second place in groups. Strange. I thought these 2 regions were the very best. How do they both share an average of second place in groups? Well, that's very strange. Is their region better than second place? Well, that can't be, right? So yeah, we see Korea with Griffin in first, SKT in first, and Damwon in first. Very strange. So 3 times 1, yeah, you know the deal. So they average in first. So why is the narrative not changed? So, oh, Korea is more consistent over multiple days, over multiple games, right? 6 games. They're actually able to get first. They're actually able to beat these other regions. So why isn't the narrative changing? Because group stage doesn't matter for these guys. Consistency doesn't matter. In the end, it's the big flashy win at the end of the day. Yes, no one looks back at like group stage 10 years from now and says, oh yeah, back then the tiebreaker game, Griffin won against G2 and that makes them way better, and no one cares, which is understandable, right? Only the winners are remembered, and the winners of the entire tournament, that is. But then again, this is not for the history discussion. This is just last year. This was just last year. So carrying the narrative of last Worlds into this year's MSI, which didn't happen, and into this year's Worlds as the continuation of the story, right? Every Worlds is also the Worlds before another Worlds, and the Worlds after another Worlds. So these stories have to continue. So if you say G2 and China are so good, and everyone else is bad, then they have to back this up. And if the reality doesn't reflect that, then you have to change the narrative. You can't just keep the narrative as it is if the world and the facts are different. Well, okay, maybe you don't want to change your narrative just so fast, right? But then again, so we move to the next stage, to the knockout stage, where, yeah, it gets a bit different to the results of the group stage. The group stage, as I explained with the MSI performance of 2019, is the more consistent game, or the more consistent phase of the tournament. Because, yeah, as I alluded to, more games, more time difference. This is similar with a league format. Over multiple months and weeks, they meet again and again, with preparations in between, and then at the end, the team winning most of the games in the league, getting most of the points, is usually the best team, because they are the most consistent. Even if they get upset by the last placed ones, this doesn't change the fact, because they are going to win again and again against the other teams. So yeah, group stage is again the most important for analysis in terms of best team, because it values consistency way more, which is in my estimation the most relevant fact, right? Why do I say that? Because this is not only in every other sport, but also in league. So looking at solo queue, for example, the ranking system. How are ranks determined? This is not, you're not getting challenger because you once win a game against other challenger players when they're in off roll and whatever. What, you don't get challenger through winning a few games or once or twice, even if you're winning against good enemies by some chance, right? You're not getting challenger through this. How do you get challenger? You get challenger for beating everyone again and again and again on many days, on many games over the entire year, right? You can get challenger in a week or two, I don't care. But even if you do that, you need to play multiple games on multiple days. And by that, consistency is key to get high ranks in League of Legends. Everyone will tell you that. And maybe there's some outliners, but that's not relevant here. This means if you evaluate a team, why should you not evaluate the same statistic as a player, right? If you're looking at the player, yeah, he's consistent. He's not running it down every game. He always gets good CS. Even CS are valued on average, right? CS per minute, not CS. Oh, this wave he got every CS. He's so good. Yeah, but he missed all CS of the last two waves. No, it's consistency that's key in every metric. Yes, extremes are nice and flashy and cool, make cool statistics, but in the end, the truly best are consistent players. Consistent players over multiple or prolonged time frames. This is why Faker is the GOAT, because he's consistently good. He's consistently in the top 3 of mid laners ever. And even if he's not the flashiest, he's adapting and so on and so on. He's always consistent, and that's why he's so good. And that's also the same thing with evaluation of teams. You can say one team is very good at the moment, but at the moment, how is it with consistency? Is this team good the entire month, the entire patch, the entire spring or summer split? What's with the entire year? What's with the next 2 years? Or what's with this whole team iteration? So to say, like, these one best of 5 here, what is it? I don't know, G2 against SKT, G2 1-3-1. Does this mean this team is way better? Maybe in the moment, maybe on this day. Like, especially for this series with this whole shaker bullshit going on. Yeah, daily performance in this case was very important. Like, no kidding. Same with the finals, G2 against FPX. Like, in my opinion, FPX is way better, but will G2 always go down 0-3? I don't think so. And you could make this argument for whole different games here. Damwon versus G2. So Damwon, these like 16-year-old boys going on stage against these more or less veterans of G2. So yeah, obviously they get stage fright, but give them more games. Give them more time. Not more time in the sense like let them grow up. No, let's play 7 days a week, every day. Let's play 5 games every day. And then see who ends up on top, right? This is how you more or less should evaluate who's the better team. I understand that this is not practical, But you have to look at that way if you're analyzing team strengths. Unless you're talking about who wins. But that's a different point of view. So yeah, at the end of this tournament, yeah, so Korea lost against EU here, but then Korea won against EU there. Then Korea lost against China in Griffin against IG, and then FPX also beats Fnatic. So if we look at this, you could say EU and Korea are about even. Korea is below China, and EU is also below China. So China on top, and then Korea and EU even. This is what quarterfinals would indicate, based on their results, right? I'm not going to argue that like a team like Griffin would always lose against IG, because this is very certain with the Sword Griffin. And then in semis, I already talked about SKT G2, IG against FPX. So IG, for them, I think, with their X factor of like players like, what's his name, The Shy or Rookie popping up, they need this X factor in their games. So for them, just a 5-game series is enough, or is what they need to surprise and overwhelm the enemy. For FPX, who are way more consistent with players like LWX and Doinby and even Tien to an extent, for them, they can play 10 games, 20 games, and then they win because they are more consistent. So yeah, this is this about winning and being better, but also, yeah, the knockout stage indicates China, EU and then Korea, based on the EU versus Korea game when G2 and SKT. This is then the narrative, China first, G2 and EU second. But then the question is here, so is EU second or is G2 second? So we see both other European teams also got second, right? So not that great performance in, what is it, main stage? Like, okay, second is okay, and it's good, but if you're talking about being the best, right? This is not about being good, this is not about being decent, right? This is about being the best, or second best. Then being second is not really that remarkable, right? You want to be first at least a few times to get second, right? Both these teams, Splice and Fnatic, lost 1-3 in quarters. And only G2 managed to get to semis and then sneak into finals. So the whole argument about EU being that great, I can't really buy that, because their teams clearly failed in knockouts. Yes, you could say, okay, so Korea's Griffin and Downone also failed, which is absolutely fine, but we're not arguing here for Korea to be the top region, right? We're arguing who is the second best, right? Because teams like IG, FPX were clearly a notch above, but then the point is with China as a whole. So is it just FPX, is it just IG? Because RNG was sure not that great. And then again the argument is, or the question is, was RNG the third best candidate? What about other teams of that time, right? This is the problem with these tournaments. They trick you into believing these teams are the best of their region, because that's what everyone says, this is what the numbers show on the screen. You see first of LPL or something like that. But are they actually the best team there? In some cases, maybe. In others, probably not. In others, clearly not. So then if these teams lose or win, and you have the expectation of them being the best or like very good in their region, and then they under or overperform, you directly assume the whole region is good. A similar story with Gigabyte Marines at I think 2019 MSI. They were really popping off, so everyone thought Vietnam was very good at that moment. But it turned out actually Gigabyte Marines was just very good. Now, like, in 2020, times have changed. We have teams like Flash Wolves also there, being very, very good. Similar story with the LMS. Okay, the LMS now has gone like past their prime and doesn't really exist anymore, and has turned into the PCS. I think, yeah, PCS. So this is a bit of a different story. But even back then, we had teams like Flash Wolves, and then, yeah, other teams like, we always expected AHQ to be that great, because, well, Flash Wolves, look at what they're doing. They're winning games, but oh no, then they're not. This is it, which one team biased. Same story with G2, and in a sense Fnatic, right? Fnatic reached 2018 finals. By a miracle, if I may add, but that's something different. Just because one team is spearlining tournaments doesn't really mean the whole region is great. Doesn't mean the team is that great either. Maybe they just won by chance. Which I don't mean to say that every winner doesn't deserve it. It's not what I'm saying at all. It's just that we need to get away from this result-based analysis and also this, how's it called? I think it's umbrella terms. Not really sure if that's the correct word here. What I mean is, one team wins the tournament and then the power level of the whole region is upgraded, or the glory of that whole region is increased by this win of one team at one tournament. And maybe all the other teams at that tournament really performing quite bad. Which is certainly the case for EU at 2018 and 2019 Worlds, right? They didn't perform all that well. Certainly they got in both finals, but then let's look back at 2018. So, where is it? Team Vitality, 3-3 in groups, losing against Cloud9. Yeah, Cloud9 was quite good back then. I mean, they were 4-2, same as RNG. But also, there's a freebie Genji there, being a challenger level team at that point. Which, yeah, no one knew back then, but they certainly were. Or, where is it? G2, 3-3, in a group with Flash Wolves and Fungal Buffalo. Yeah. So, yes, in the end, it looks quite good when G2 is able to beat RNG 3-2, right? Very close. But would they win a best of 100? I don't think so. They wouldn't have won a best of 100. Fnatic against EDG? Yeah, maybe they would have won the best of 100. Not too sure. Fnatic against Cloud9, who Cloud9, yeah, I don't know what happened against Africa, but anyway, so Fnatic beating a Cloud9 team, which is, I don't want to insult NA, but yeah, it's certainly not on the same level as these big three regions. And even here I have to punch myself, because I again fuel the narrative. Big three regions, or just big three teams, like China, Korea, and then we have Fnatic and G2. Which is something we saw this world as well. If we want to leap and leave the past behind us and just go to a more recent past, again, everyone, we had no MSI, but we have 2019 Worlds in mind. So again, EU-China final, so EU-China best, right? Then we go into the tournament. We start with a really cool playing stage. I really like this format. So we see, where is it? We have playing stage 1 here, Group A, Team Liquid on top, and then, well, what is this? I thought EU was so good, but what about Mad Lions with 1-3 record? They have the same record as the last team. What's going on here? Similar story in Group B, LGD, 1-3 record, same as last place. Yes, like Mad Lions is before INTZ because they won the head-to-head. Similarly, LGD played the tiebreaker game against V3. What's going on here? I thought these regions were so good. Why are these teams not so good? Well, yeah, maybe these regions aren't that great, but their first place and second place teams are just good. Because these fourth place teams are certainly not doing all that well. And yes, there's a whole nother debate about why LGD is the fourth place team and not a team like IG, FPX or Victory 3 got a chance for this. But this is a whole nother debate, and yeah, this is also something I showed, or how do I say this? How I indicated it a few minutes ago, right? With the RNG thing in the worlds before, with RNG probably not being the third best team in China at that point. Similar story here. I don't think, even though I really like LGD, I was rooting for them, but I have to say they weren't the fourth best team in China. But this is the thing. Again, the tournament says they're the fourth best, so now we assume fourth best team in China is bad. So now we assume China is bad because their fourth best team is nearly losing in Plains. Yeah. Well, yeah, then again, at the second phase, the knockout stage of Plains, they certainly performed. LGD showed why they are not at wildcard level, which is like under every level we ever expected, right? We were talking about maybe China or EU not being first or second best region here, right? This was the whole debate. And now we get to the reality with these fourth seeds, which are a fucking terrible idea, by the way. And then we see, yeah, these teams are nearly losing against wildcard regions. Or like nearly losing. LGD lost 3 games, Mad Lions lost 3 games in the first round. And then Mad Lions even managed to lose another 3 games in the next round. And actually is eliminated by Supermassive. And don't get me wrong, Supermassive was playing quite good here on the back of Armored and Kakao. But still, this is. I mean, you can look at my channel. I covered these games, so yeah. Supermassive played good, but still, Mad Lions. I thought they come from the best region here, or second best region. What's going on here? And then it's not that they were beat by a very great team. Supermassive then proceeds to lose 3-0 against Unicorns of Love. So what's going on here? Fourth seed not that great. This is one of the first times we're actually able to prove that this whole narrative spasm is just stupid. We see the fourth seeds of these supposedly sold super great regions getting like their ties handed to them by wildcard regions. Yeah. So EU's fourth team is the first major region to ever be disqualified in Plains. Major region, right? Not counting, what was it? Yeah, some LMS team got knocked out in Plains before, but major region, right? So yeah, what's this? When we go to the main event, I mean, you all have it fresh in your memory, so not going into too much detail. But then again, we see, so EU and China, again, best regions because they were the teams in the World Finals, and we're not looking at the more consistent stats of group stage or something like that. We're just looking at the end, the shiny names written on every billboard. So we see, actually, China with their 4 seeds in groups getting a first, a second, a third, and another first, which ends up to 7th through 4, which is like round about, what is it, like it's 1.75 in ranks, so like average around second place, nearly second place, first seed. So yeah, this is something like, this looks good. I mean, they got 4 teams, so they're bound to get they have more chances to get better spots, right? Yeah. And then Europe. Oh wait, what's this? So the best team, the last team finalist, the last MSI winner, what's going on here? They're second in their group? Strange. And then, oh, what is this? 1-5 below a wildcard, more like wildcard region in brackets. 1-5 here? What's that? I thought this team was so good. This team was the team that dominated summer in EU. This team like comes from the best region. This team dominated the best region. Yeah, they didn't play that well in playoffs, but well, what's going on here? And then we see Fnatic 4-2 score in second, which is, it's better, yeah, it's good. But then again, we're not looking for seconds here. I thought this region was the best. Or like at least second best, right? Yeah, what's going on here? So we have 2 times second and then 1/4. So this is 8 divided by 3, which is 2.66, which is in more or less average of a third. And I thought they were so good. What's going on? And then, yeah, G2 also loses the tiebreaker, so yeah, they're more or less 4-3 against the 5-2 soon. But yeah. Like, it's very strange again how the narrative doesn't change, even though we see that these teams are not performing all that well. It never changed. Even though Rogue got destroyed in Group B, yes, they had them in their group, yes, they had JDG in their group, but to be last against PSG, and even though we say this with them and JDG, in their narrative, or in the official narrative before Worlds, or all year long, with EU being so damn good, a team that is first in EU's regular split, and again, I say this, regular split is more indicative to a team's power than any playoffs ever will be. So, yes, best of 5s are cool, but then again, teams in regions like Korea, they're playing best of 3s as their regular split. So these leagues are really indicative of their team strengths. So that's maybe a problem with EU, with playing best of 1s. So you could actually just get first by winning 5 coin flips, because every coin flip is not checked. It's just, okay, you won 1 game with a cheese you prepared 1 week. Good job. Yeah. So this is another problem with European League. But yeah, I'm mentioning this. Everyone was like them and JDG are completely dominating Rogue. But I thought Rogue was so good. I thought Rogue was the best team of EU. They won the regional, their normal league. Yes, playoffs was something else, but even then in playoffs, they're what is it, third seed. Third seed of Europe is not better than a lousy first place of Korea. I thought Korea was so bad. I mean, they didn't win any tournament in the last 2 years. What's going on here? Again, and no one is mentioning this. This is the total bias that we see in this narrative. If something doesn't fit them, they're not going to mention it. Imagine last year at 2019, if EU had every team in first. There were headlines, everyone was mentioning it. Every team Korean in first place, but let's look at EU, how every team of their group, of that region made it out of groups. But every Korean team did accomplish the same thing even better. No, let's look, look, Sply is so good here. This is the total bias we see there. And then, like here, going over the Korean seedings, we have Damwon in first, Genji in first, and Dragon X in second, which is 4 divided by 3, which is, oh, what is this? This is by far the best we have now, with 1.33 being quite a amount better than the 1.75 from China. So again, Korea averages a better rating in groups than any other region. And again, I say to you, groups is more relevant because it's valuing consistency more than a one-day performance in a best of 5. I'm repeating myself at some points here, I know, but I need to get this point across. This is just very flawed how this is perceived. Going over the knockout stage, TS against Fnatic 3-2. which is, yeah, this is understandable by the narrative. But it's a bit shocking because the first seed of China should be way better than the second seed of EU, even in their biased narrative. But yeah, this is what they understand. Suning against JDG, they don't care. It's two Chinese teams. Korea losing to EU, Genji, also Korea against G2. So, oh, Korea washed up. Oh, look how they got demolished. Oh, right? But then again, just like JDG, is Genji even the third best team in Korea? This is debatable. I mean, many were calling Dragon X not the second best team, which is understandable. I think at the end of summer we had them.Thanks obviously in first, being the best team, and every other team had their problems. So SKT had their roster all over the place, Genji had a poor grasp on the matter again, and Dragon X was just a one-man team with everyone else being a bit under the weather. And nothing changed. SKT experimented more in that roster and yeah, failed by doing that. Genji still had no idea what they were doing in the meta, which was visible in every draft. Even though they outdrafted SKT, which are the first videos on this channel, you might want to check that out, they still didn't draft and play towards what is relevant at the moment. And this showed also in group stage, which wasn't hardly punished by teams like Fnatic, TSM and LGD, because they as well are very flawed in many aspects of their game, which is, yeah. And then Dragon X, where, well, they had a group with a wildcard region and the third best team of NA. No, what's it? No, second, sorry. Which is, yeah, a few leagues below the total power level here. So Korea against Korea, no one cares about that, right? Because this doesn't fuel any narrative, besides them.Thanks being so super good. But no one cares about that, the media table. Again, TS against Suning, no one cares, two Chinese teams. Now they're hyping up Suning because they won against two pre-tournament favorites. But then again, this shouldn't be so much of a surprise if you've watched the group stage. So in group stage, yes, JDG lost against them.Thanks and they still got second place and they still won one game. But did they also not lost a game against PCS? Did they not get completely stomped by them.Thanks with a legendary Nidalee? Yeah, so even though they got second place, they didn't play as well as they should. This also shows that these commentators probably have not watched all that much of LPL. I mean, they all say they did, which, I mean, I believe in them that they watched the finals, or like the last few games of JDG, but maybe they failed to understand that JDG normally plays way better than what they showed in groups. The same story goes with TOP. They played way worse than they played all year long. Similarly, this was seen against the Fnatic game. A full power TS. Do they nearly lose against Fnatic? No, they absolutely should not or would not. But in this reality, they nearly did. So it was not a surprise to see TS lose against Suning. Suning, a team which has improved from playoffs in China, right? Going into groups, playing against teams like G2 and a surprisingly quite interesting Machi. And then improving further, showing a new adaptability in the tiebreaker game. And then, yeah, pummeling down a weak JDG and also an underperforming TS. With like Gade Award absolutely going to either Hanabi or Knight, with both players like not even being on half the power level from the regular split. On the other side, them.Thanks wins against G2. How can this be? I thought G2 was so good. G2 won against them last year. I thought Korea bad. What is happening here? So yeah, G2 got demolished here. What happens? No one's talking about it. You look at the media, you look at the source like YouTube, you see very few videos discussing the series. Very few people like calling out something or analyzing this. There was very little coverage. How can this be? Like, this doesn't fuel the narrative. How can Korea be in the final? This is an EU-Chinese final, right? Where EU wins maybe the first time. Ha ha ha. No, probably EU loses 0-3 against China again. So yeah, whatever. So that down 1-1 against G2 is like, this is something no one wanted to see from any broadcast around the world, or like any Western. We're going only about Western, right? I have no idea what's going on in China or Korea here, but we're talking about Western. No one wanted to see that. Obviously because of the Western bias, but also because of the G2 bias. Like, G2 was set out to be so damn good again, right? Beating Genji, like, very flawed team. Forgetting their weak summer performance, where teams like G2 and Fnatic were in 5th and 6th place at some point. Yeah, forgetting all of that, G2 was dominating all year long. Any loss was just them not really trying. And now suddenly they lost? Whoa, how can this be? And even then, they were saying, suddenly it was, yeah, down 1 was set out to win the tournament the entire time. Which is certainly something that was said at some points, with players and commentators calling out down 1, TES, and JDG. But this was more of a formality. This is more, oh yeah, down 1 improved a lot. But then again, Korea didn't win against the, like, what was it called? PSC? This MSI version that was played locally more or less this year. They didn't win there. Then also, like, down 1 was really bad last year. They were first in their group. And then they actually lost against G2, who was in the finals. Very bad performance by this team. And overall, Korea very bad. So, yeah. Very sad here. And then at the end, down 1-1. You check out what happens on YouTube. You see nothing. 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 No, nothing. I'm typing it now. We see Suning, or like down 1 victory. What do we see? We see nothing. Nothing. We see the game, we see the VODs, but we see little content here. No analysis, no reviews, no like congratulations, no great montages, nothing. And that's actually exactly what I mean. This victory didn't fulfill any narrative that was set out by Riot Games and their caster desks. As such, like, they didn't care, they didn't bother with it. And that's also a problem with the overall viewing experience from League of Legends. These narratives certainly make it interesting, because you build a story around the game, right? You make out these weird stuff with down 1 seeks revenge for G2, which was something which was set up like months ago. I remember interviews in January where people asked, so down 1, what you're going to do? Do you want to seek revenge against G2 this year? And they were asking, who's G2? These players don't care. Most of these players don't care for these narratives. But they are enforced by media. And I guess, yeah, they make it interesting for some. But the problem with these narratives, don't confuse it with analysis. Yeah, you can make these rivalries between regions. You can set out teams to be very good. You can do all of that. But in the end, don't mistake it for analysis. Don't say that the winner of Worlds is the best team in the world. Don't say something like that. Don't say that the best of 5 determines who is the better team. So, yeah, I know this was some of a rant. going all over the place with all of this. And at the end, the question who's the best region, it was just a joke question, right? This doesn't really matter. The best region, how do you define that? By the solo queue environment where these players can practice, by overall practice environment, right? So a region like Japan, who can scrim with both Korea and China, are they, because of that, are they better than a region like Australia, who doesn't really is able, the OPL, who isn't able to do this, or NA? How does this impact this analysis point of evaluating a region? What is with titles? But then again, also titles are just flashy chains, just accessories, because usually one title doesn't mean anything. So what about a bunch of titles? With like one title maybe by chance, right? But teams or players like SKT, Faker, who have established many titles over their career, or like just Korea in general, with I think 6 out of 10 titles, 6 out of 10 worlds were won by Korea. So yeah, this is probably not by chance, right? Also because it's over many years, it's consistent. Like also Korea was in the finals 7 times. Yeah, this is consistency. Because of this you can say that Korea is the best region of all time, right? They're consistently on top. But the best region at any moment is a very difficult question, and it doesn't matter. How do you evaluate that? You need to look at the players, you need to look at the coaching staff that is in a region, right? You look at the teams, you look at the solo queue. So how, like NA, how can they ever be a good region? Because they have no training environment. Not only are the players not training at all, but or like not to a great great margin. The practice environment is bad. How can you say that that's the best region when you can't even practice there? Or EU, they won 1 title. How can you say by 1 title they're the best region? Then the next point is the best region ever, but I think there's no debate. This is Korea, because just the longevity and the consistency, which are the highest points of evaluation for nearly everything. But at this point, so down 1-1 in Worlds, is Korea now the best region again? Weren't they the best region before that? Did they stop? And then the point is, so China won 2 Worlds before that, right? 2018, 2019 with IG and FPX. Let's look at their teams. They maxed out on import slots with Korean players. They have Korean... no, they didn't have Korean coaches. Or did they? No, IG had Coach Kim. And what was it? Warhorse? Or Steak? Not sure what's the name of FPX coach. But they had a Vietnamese coach. So yeah, what's with these teams? So yeah, they have a Chinese emblem on their back or on their arm, but were they really Chinese teams when they just had 3 Chinese players? I mean, yeah, I guess 3 is greater than 2, but then what about the carrying, right? I mean, for IG, I guess no one will debate that Rookie and the Shy or Duke did most of the work. Even though, by some reason, Ning got the MVP for the finals. Anyway, this is a whole different debate. These teams winning, are they real, like, can you even call them NA or Chinese, when most of their players are not even from their region, or the most important players are not from their region? As such, these trophies that they get, do they even carry any weight? Or if you're talking about top teams from a league, so if you're looking at the LPL, teams like FPX, Invictus Gaming, LGD, Suning, which were regarded as the 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th best team by champion points this year. So Kim-Gun Doinbi, the Shy Rookie, coached with Fly, Peanut Kramer, Sword Art and SOFM. Every of these teams have these import slots. and I guess players like Gimgun, and well, that's it. Gimgun is the only not hard carry for these teams. S2FM, I don't have to say anything, right? Sword Art as well, completely putting the team on his back at Worlds. Peanut and Chie is the strongest duo there for them, and Kramer was carrying hard in planes for them. And also with the Shy, Rookie and Doinby, I think I don't have to mention anything. Looking at coaching stuff here, Warhorse, Refrain, sorry, Kashao, and Fly and Chris, all foreign coaches from Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. What's with this? So how can you, like, if these teams are doing well, is it because of the 3 Chinese players, or maybe because of the Taiwanese coaches, or the Korean hardcore carries? And that's also a debate here for this like, Chinese dominance that was going on. These teams weren't really all that Chinese. So if a team like TS maybe won this year, I think TS doesn't have any foreign player in their team. Karsa, sorry. Yeah, Karsa, the only PCS player. And surprisingly, in my opinion, Karsa was by far the best player at Worlds from TS. I think Jackie Love had major mishaps, 369 was invisible, similar story with Knight, who he had like 1 or 2 small moments, but nothing like close to what we expected. Yeah, so what's going on with this? But then we have teams like G2, SKT, Downward, whatever you call them. These teams, Fnatic as well, are all European or Korean. So if these teams would have won for multiple times, you could argue that they represent the region more than these Mish teams from NA. Like, let's not start with NA because NA is not relevant for the discussion of best in any statistic here. This is a whole different issue that I can make a video about in the future. That's very interesting, but maybe a bit controversial as well as this one. I mean, if anyone would actually listen to this video, they would rip my head off. But that's the whole issue here. Everything is just made up. We say these teams are great. Well, maybe they aren't. We only see limited amount of info from them. We see just a limited amount of games. We say these players are very good, but these players aren't even from this region. How can a team not consisting of any Chinese players indicate that the Chinese region is the best? If like many of their teams are not fully Chinese, or where the hard carries are Chinese players. TS is actually is a positive example for them here. But even JDG, Kanavi, Loken, Kanavi, I think everyone would agree that Kanavi is the best player, right? Loken, maybe not the second best player, but the third best player on the team as well. So what's this? These Chinese teams, like how do they indicate that China is the best region when they're not even Chinese players on this team? Or like mostly, or no, mainly. You know what I mean. And that's the whole issue. So I would not argue that Down1 made it so that Korea is the best region. Again, I would argue nothing has changed. The Korean teams didn't win. The Korean teams were probably not that great at this time frame. But the region, with the players, and the adaptability from the players, not the teams, right? Because the players certainly were able to adapt, right? The players globally, right? In teams in China, in teams in NA, and in solo queue, the Chinese solo queue was playing this faster style, this more risky and more aggressive play. They did this. There's this never stopped. It's just that the teams and the pro scene didn't adapt. And you could argue that this might say that the whole region was bad because the teams weren't winning. But we're looking back at 2019. Everyone was first with a 5-1 score. Griffin actually with a 6-1 score because they beat G2 the tiebreaker. So yeah, I'm going to end this here, right? I bet this is way too long, but down 1 didn't bring back Korean dominance. Down 1 brought back the title, and by that the media recognition for Korea and Korean players. Okay, so that's this for this whole long discussion. I had to go back to previous tournaments because these narratives are being built. Like, I wouldn't want to say, okay, everyone is saying this and that's it. I want to say everyone is saying this because of that and that. I mean, this is more of a rant and not of a factual one. It is factual, but I'm not quoting any sources, right? I'm not going on, so this caster said this is this at that point in time, and because of that, that is, and so on. That's not what I did, and that's not what I wanted to do here. I just wanted to go what the main consensus was in the Western audience, and this was established mostly by the Western media and spearheaded by the casters and analyst desks, right? You find this in YouTube videos, you find this on Twitter, you find this on YouTube comments, Reddit a bit, not using that site all that much, but you find it everywhere, and this consensus was being established. And I showed how this was established, and how it is flawed, and how the whole idea is even flawed. So yeah. So this is now over. I want to say a few words here. First of all, thank you very much if you listened to this point. I know it has been a long one, and it was a bit confusing at points, I bet. If you have any questions or opinions on your own, post them in the comments. I'm sure to answer them all and chat with you if you want to. I have time. So now a few more other things. This video came out a few days after the last one, which is not my usual style of doing a video every second day. And with more personal stuff coming on, with university now, I'm not going to do a video every second day. I'm looking for a video every 3 days. If it's not possible any other way, maybe every 4 days, but I'm looking for every 3 days. If something changes, I'm going to inform you all. And then with now off season starting, I think I'm going to do a weekly video about the off season changes. So far, nothing all that much has happened. We could talk about a few rumors, which if nothing happens till, let's say, Sunday, I'm going to have to include rumors in this as well. But then we're going to talk about a few off-season changes, and yeah, what this brings to the table for the teams, how these team synergies could work together, and so on. And also with season 11 now coming up, obviously there will be content about the items, rune changes, potential changes to the jungle, and how this could affect something, and then how the meta could shape out, and many stuff that is connected to all of this. We have to find out how the scene develops, and then maybe we find something interesting here. If by any chance you have some ideas for a video, post them in the comments and we could talk about it. And yeah, very long video, but yeah, hope you had some fun listening. This is just a podcast, hopefully you noticed. And yeah, wish you all a great day, and yeah, see you here in a few days.